Other big stories. Anti-ICE protests have grown across the country as Democratic leaders continue to criticize the federal deployment of Marines and National Guard troops in Los Angeles.
It's financially as well as emotionally. It takes a toll.
Vincent, you voted for Donald Trump?
Yes, I did.
In downtown LA, a curfew is still in effect right now for 2 more hours in a single square-mile area. But as you can see, it didn't stop people from protesting outside of the curfew zone last night.
He thought the Trump administration was going to focus solely on deporting criminals. It seems immigration officials, he says, are just trying to meet quotas now. 6 Nicaraguan men who on May 27th were detained along US 1 in Sugarloaf Key on their way to a job. Their immigration attorney says it should not have happened because 5 of the 6 have their paperwork in order with pending asylum cases. Vincent Scardina is the owner of the roofing company where they worked. He's owned it 37 years.
We want to show you a map now just to give you an idea of where exactly these protests are happening. You can see here there were protests really across the country yesterday alone, from California and Washington State all the way to Baltimore, Maryland. And while most have been peaceful, demonstrators have clashed with law enforcement in a few places.
You become their friends, just not an employer, but a friend. And you see what happens to their family. It's quite a shock.
Given his support for the president, we asked what he would tell the commander-in-chief if he had a chance.
What happened here? This situation is just totally, just blatantly not at all what they said it was.
Immigration agents are rounding up folks, undocumented folks, in other cities as well. And as CNN's Diane Gallagher reports, the tactics and results of some of those raids are raising questions and raising fear.
The riot shields at the front. There's about 5 to 6 of the riot shields, a group of 10 people. You can see projectiles are currently being thrown at ICE officers.
That was yesterday in Tucson, Arizona. A reporter from our CBS News affiliate was covering the protests live. You can see law enforcement on scene responded by spraying people with what appears to be mace or pepper spray.
Let them go! Let them go! Let them go!
A second overnight curfew is in place in downtown Los Angeles as protests against the Trump administration's immigration enforcement continue. Police say they carried out mass arrests following the introduction of a partial curfew in downtown districts of LA overnight into Wednesday. President Donald Trump has sparked controversy by deploying troops to Los Angeles against the wishes of LA's mayor and California's governor. Now the US Defense Department says 700 US Marines could be on the streets of LA as soon as Thursday.
Intense scenes outside a Nebraska meatpacking plant as protesters throw rocks at government SUVs. Dozens of workers crammed into white buses. A surprise immigration raid at Glen Valley meatpacking plant in South Omaha, as seen on this edited video provided by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. CNN has not reviewed the raw footage, but this does show a coordinated effort that employees say happened during a morning meeting.
Well, they just came in and said that it was a raid and we had to get everybody out of production. And I just went inside production and told everybody, hey, immigration is here, start running. So they just started hiding everywhere. And then they found everyone.
We begin tonight in Los Angeles, where Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have intensified workplace raids, detaining more than 300 people since Friday. The arrests have drawn sustained protests outside federal buildings, now guarded by National Guard troops. CBS's Carter Evans reports from Los Angeles.
In the last few hours, President Trump gave his reaction to the situation in Los Angeles.
What we have is a situation in Los Angeles that was caused by gross incompetence. They didn't have the police to handle it. The police were asking us to come in. They were very late. We had to go in to save a lot of ICE officers, as you know, who were held up. They were holed up in a building, and they were being attacked. And the military went in. The National Guard went in and got them. The police weren't able, unfortunately, to move fast enough, but we moved fast enough. And while we were there, we stayed there, and we stopped tremendous destruction and death.
So they guarded me to my car, and I showed them my ID. And that's when they were putting these bracelets to identify you if you were a U.S. citizen or not. And then they did let me go.
ICE telling CNN it was, quote, executing a federal search warrant at Glen Valley Foods into the large-scale employment of aliens without legal work authorization, adding that during the raid, an undocumented man from Honduras, quote, brandished a weapon and assaulted federal agents and officers. More than 70 people in total were detained. The state's Republican governor issuing a statement supporting federal partners, while local officials tried to ease the community's concern.
This does impact our community, and it does create fear.
My community is being terrorized by immigration raids at this moment.
If you resist lawful orders, you're going to jail. Let me be very clear about that. If you block an intersection or a roadway in Brevard County, you are going to jail. If you flee arrest, you're going to go to jail tired, because we are going to run you down and put you in jail. If you try to mob rule a car in Brevard County, gathering around it, refusing to let the driver leave, in our county, you're most likely going to get run over and dragged across the street. If you spit on us, you're going to the hospital and in jail. If you hit one of us, you're going to the hospital and jail, and most likely get bitten by one of our big, beautiful dogs that we have here. If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at, because we will kill you graveyard dead. We're not going to play. This has got to stop.
Let's break down the recent ICE raids and the controversies surrounding them. This has been a really intense and fast-moving situation, particularly in California and other major cities, touching on some very raw nerves across the country. Officers without IDs and masked faces. This is one of the most significant points of contention. We've seen numerous reports and viral videos showing federal agents, including those from ICE, conducting operations while wearing masks or balaclavas that obscure their faces, and sometimes without clearly visible identification. Concerns about accountability. When officers' faces are hidden and their IDs aren't prominent, it creates a significant barrier to accountability. If there's an incident, it becomes incredibly difficult for the public or even other law enforcement agencies to identify individual agents involved. This lack of transparency erodes trust and makes it harder to report misconduct. Intimidation factor. For many, particularly within immigrant communities, the sight of masked, heavily equipped agents can be deeply intimidating and frightening. Critics argue it's a tactic designed to instill fear, and it can blur the line between law enforcement and less identifiable, potentially hostile groups. Safety for officers versus public right to know. While some argue that masks might be for officer safety, e.g., protecting identity from doxing or retaliation, civil liberties advocates and many lawmakers contend that the public has a right to know who is enforcing the law, especially in public spaces. This has led to calls from various state and local officials, including senators, for ICE to mandate clear identification and limit the use of masks. Allegations of excessive force. Alongside the issue of anonymity, there have been numerous allegations and reports of excessive force being used during these operations, both by federal agents during arrests and in response to protests. During arrests, while specific details are often contested, accounts from community members and legal advocates describe instances where arrests have been made aggressively, sometimes involving property damage or physical altercations beyond what's deemed necessary for a nonviolent apprehension. Against protesters, this is where we've seen more visible clashes. In cities like Los Angeles and Chicago, federal forces have been reported using less lethal munitions like tear gas and rubber bullets, or deploying tactical vehicles to disperse crowds. Videos have shown agents physically pushing or grabbing protesters. These actions have drawn sharp criticism from local politicians and human rights organizations, who view them as disproportionate responses to what were often peaceful demonstrations, even if some escalated. Influence and impact on families and businesses. The impact of these raids extends far beyond the immediate arrests, creating widespread ripple effects. Families. The most immediate and heartbreaking impact is on families. Parents are separated from children, sometimes U.S. citizens, leading to immense psychological trauma, economic instability, and disruption of daily life. Children can experience significant stress, anxiety, and long-term developmental issues. The fear of raids can lead families to avoid public services, including healthcare and education, further exacerbating their vulnerabilities. Businesses, worksite raids in particular, can decimate businesses. When a significant portion of a workforce is arrested, operations can grind to a halt, leading to financial losses, supply chain disruptions, especially in sectors like agriculture and meatpacking, and even permanent closures. This also impacts local economies, as businesses struggle and workers' wages disappear from circulation. Community fabric. Beyond individual families and businesses, the raids create a pervasive atmosphere of fear and distrust within communities. Neighbors become wary, community events might see lower attendance, and the relationship between residents and law enforcement, even local police not involved in immigration enforcement, can be severely strained. Community crisis and clashes. The recent wave of raids has ignited a significant community crisis and widespread protests, often resulting in direct clashes between demonstrators and federal agents. Widespread protests. From Los Angeles to New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, and parts of Texas, large-scale demonstrations have erupted. People are marching, holding vigils, and directly confronting federal vehicles and agents to express their outrage and demand an end to the operations. Local versus federal authority. A critical aspect of this crisis is the friction between federal immigration authorities and local/state governments. Governors and mayors, especially in sanctuary jurisdictions, have vocally condemned the raids, criticized the deployment of federal troops like the National Guard and Marines, and even taken legal action to challenge these deployments, arguing they are unlawful and provocative. This creates a complex jurisdictional standoff, escalation in curfews. In some areas, like downtown Los Angeles, the intensity of protests led to city-imposed curfews and numerous arrests of demonstrators. Federal authorities, in turn, have accused protesters of violence and obstructing law enforcement, while advocates claim the protests are a legitimate exercise of free speech against aggressive federal actions. Potential or remote false ICE raids. It's also important to address the concern about false ICE raids or scams, as these often increase during periods of heightened enforcement. Impersonation scams. Unfortunately, bad actors often take advantage of fear and uncertainty. There have been ongoing reports of individuals posing as ICE agents, either over the phone or in person, demanding money, personal information, or threatening arrest/deportation. These scammers might use fake badges, logos, or even manipulated caller IDs. How to identify real agents? Official ICE agents carry distinct badges and credentials. They typically do not demand immediate payment over the phone, ask for gift cards, or threaten immediate arrest without due process. Advocacy groups and legitimate government agencies constantly issue warnings to the public about these scams and advise people to ask for official identification. Impact of scams. These false raids or scams contribute to the overall climate of fear, exploit vulnerable individuals, and further damage trust in legitimate law enforcement, making it even harder for communities to discern real threats from fraudulent ones. In essence, these recent ICE operations are far more than just enforcement actions. They're triggering a complex social, political, and economic fallout, characterized by significant legal and ethical debates, community distress, and civil unrest.